Bullies tricked the new girl. Her revenge shook the school. She was standing over the torn piece of paper, her hands shaking as the words came into focus. The ink was smeared by a single teardrop, and the edges were streaked with blood from a fresh cut on her palm. Somewhere down the dark hallway, a door slammed, and the sound snapped her out of the trance. "Welcome to Jefferson High," it read, but this wasn't some friendly postcard. This was a threat scrawled across lined paper and placed inside her locker like a gift. The words weren't just ugly, they felt like a death sentence for every fragile piece of belonging she had hoped to find here. Amelia Alvarez pressed herself against the cold metal of the locker, heart beating like a drum. The sting in her palm felt like the sting in her chest. This was no accident. Someone had set a trap for the shy new girl. Someone wanted her humiliated, broken, or gone. She pulled the paper closer, brushing her long black hair out of her eyes. The words leaped out at her. "Run while you can, new girl. Jefferson doesn't want you." A sound came from the end of the hallway. The door to the locker room creaked open slowly, and a shadow fell across the floor. "Found you," a voice hissed. Amelia froze. Not a muscle moved. Not a breath left her chest. The sting of betrayal bubbled like acid in her throat, and buried deep within it, a seed of something darker, stronger. Something that would one day burn this whole place down. The new girl Amelia Alvarez was used to starting over. At 17, she had already changed schools 3 times because of her mum's job, but this was different. Jefferson High felt like a lion's den, and she felt like fresh meat. It started with a smile. Not a real one. The sharp, shiny smile of Victoria Kane, the queen bee of the school. Victoria had waved across the cafeteria like she knew Amelia for years. And when Victoria invited her to sit with the cool kids on the very first day, Amelia felt a rush of belonging she hadn't felt in years. But belonging came with a price. What followed was a series of pranks. First harmless, then dangerous. Someone stole Amelia's notebook and shredded her sketches of the little sister she'd lost to illness 2 years ago. Someone put a "kick me" sign on her back. Someone switched out her lunch for spoiled milk. Each time she tried to shrug it off. "It's just a joke," she would whisper to herself. "Just get through this. Don't stand out." But Victoria and her friends weren't laughing with her. They were laughing at her. Then came the text. The text that broke her that morning. Amelia received a message from an unknown number. "Meet us in the locker room after practice. We've got a surprise for you." Amelia knew she should have ignored it, but in some desperate, hopeful part of her heart, she thought this could be different. Maybe Victoria felt guilty. Maybe she wanted to make amends. That's why she went. What she found was a piece of paper inside the locker room. Not a friendly note, not an invitation, not an apology. It was a threat. "Run while you can, new girl. Jefferson doesn't want you." Her fingers shook as she read it. The sound of approaching footsteps sealed her terror. Suddenly, the locker room felt like a tomb. "Found you," said a voice from the shadows. Amelia spun around. It was Victoria. Victoria and 2 of her friends, Hannah, a tall blonde with a sharp tongue, and Kyle, the quarterback, grinning like a wolf. "What's the matter, new girl?" Victoria taunted. "Lose your voice. Not gonna run." Amelia felt like her heart would explode. The sting of betrayal bubbled like acid in her chest. Somehow, she found her voice. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Victoria tilted her head and shrugged. "Because we can, and because you don't belong here." Then Kyle stepped closer, grinning. "Welcome to Jefferson High, new girl." He winked and shoved her backward, and she fell hard, the sound echoing in the silence. Amelia slammed into the metal lockers, her palm splitting open as she tried to break the fall. The sting of the cut felt like a spark, and buried deep within that sting came a thought she hadn't felt in years. Enough. The humiliation goes viral. Amelia refused to cry. Not in front of them, not in this room, not tonight. But Victoria pulled out her phone and started recording. "Say hi to Instagram, new girl," Victoria sneered. Amelia felt the sting of humiliation like a flame. Not only were they hurting her, but they were making sure the world would witness it. The sound of Victoria's giggle felt like a knife in her chest. "Tag her," Victoria said sharply, and Hannah quickly typed away. Then came the worst part, the sound of Amelia's phone buzzing in the corner of the room. Someone had found her phone and thrown it across the floor. As she watched the screen light up, one word bubbled across it. Not wanted, not welcome. Amelia felt like she was falling into an abyss, not just because of the cruelty of this moment, but because she remembered another night like this, another school, another set of bullies, another sister she hadn't been able to save. She refused to let this happen again. The plan is, born Amelia pressed herself to the floor, and for a moment, it felt like she would stay down, broken, defeated. But then, deep inside, came a thought that felt like a whisper from the sister she'd lost. Stand up, Amelia. You don't have to be the quiet one anymore. Through the sting of the cut on her palm, through the sting of the humiliation burning in her chest, something shifted. Inside her, what had been fear bubbled into anger. What had been grief bubbled into strength. She pushed herself to her knees, brushing the hair out of her eyes. Victoria, Hannah, and Kyle were still laughing. They didn't notice the change. Not yet. Are you gonna cry, new girl? Victoria sneered. Amelia looked up slowly, brushing a drop of blood from the floor. Her voice came out low, shaking, and sharp as a blade. No, not anymore. Then she stood, slowly, deliberately, brushing the dust from her jeans, brushing away the sting of that moment, not because she felt brave, but because she refused to be broken. They didn't notice the shift in the air. Not yet. The secret nobody knew what Victoria, Hannah, and Kyle didn't know was that Amelia had a secret. It was the reason she kept to herself, the reason she refused to fight, the reason she came to Jefferson High under a new name. Amelia Alvarez wasn't just a shy new girl. Amelia Alvarez was the sister of Sofia Alvarez, a girl who had been bullied until she jumped from a bridge, a girl whose death sparked lawsuits, media coverage, and a campaign that shook a city. Amelia had promised herself she would never be a target again, never be a victim, never watch the bullies win. And tonight was the night she decided to make Victoria Kane and her friends understand exactly how it felt to have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The seeds of revenge. Amelia didn't run. Not anymore. She walked down the dark hallway of Jefferson High, her shoes making soft taps on the freshly waxed floor. The sting in her palm felt like a warning and a promise. What Victoria, Hannah, and Kyle had done tonight was just the beginning. And for Amelia Alvarez, a girl no one noticed until tonight, that was enough. She pressed herself into the shadows and pulled out her phone. The message she had just sent was already making its way through the digital threads that connected every student, every parent, every teacher at Jefferson High. It was short, simple, a video, one she had captured just moments ago when Victoria pulled out her phone to humiliate her. The sound of Victoria laughing as she spoke the words "Welcome to Jefferson High" came across crisp and clear. The sting of Amelia's palm hitting the floor. The sound of Kyle's voice as he sneered, "Say hi to Instagram, new girl." Hannah's laughter bubbling like poison. A caption appeared across the video. They thought they could break the new girl. They were wrong. With one tap, it went live. Then Amelia dropped the phone in her bag, pressed herself into the bathroom, and sank down onto the cold tile floor. In the silence that followed, a strange mix bubbled within her. Terror, guilt, and an electric thrill. For the first time in years, she felt like she had a voice. The video goes viral the next morning. Jefferson High was a different place. By first period, whispers floated down every hallway. By second period, phones were being pulled out under desks. By lunch, Victoria Kane, the reigning queen of the school, was nowhere to be found. But the video, it was everywhere. "Have you seen it?" Someone gasped. "Is this for real?" Another whispered. "New girl's got guts," said a boy, with a skateboard, grinning as he watched. Amelia walked down the hallway like a ghost, ignoring the eyes that followed her. But deep down, she felt the sting of vindication. Not because of the video, but because of the shift she felt in the air. The same people who had ignored her suddenly noticed. The same people who had mocked her were now wary. What they didn't know was that this was only the first domino. Victoria's secret unravels at lunch. Victoria emerged from the bathroom, pale and shaking. The video had gone viral, not just within the school, but across platforms, too. Victoria Kane, the rich girl with connections, the one everybody feared, had been exposed for bullying the quiet new girl. The internet didn't forget. The internet didn't forgive. Amelia watched from the edge of the courtyard as Victoria tried to hold herself together, brushing her long blonde hair out of her tear-filled eyes. Hannah, usually smug, was nowhere to be seen. Kyle had stormed out of school, slamming the locker room door like a boy about to explode. Then came the sound Amelia hadn't expected. The sound of Victoria's voice, shaking as she yelled across the courtyard. "This isn't over, new girl. You're done. Do you understand?" Didn't reply. Just watched. The sting of Victoria's voice felt like a spark thrown onto dry wood. Whatever guilt had bubbled inside of Amelia moments ago began to burn away. What Victoria and her friends had started wasn't going to end. Tonight, it was going to end when every last one of them learned the cost of cruelty. The secret weapon that evening. In the cramped bedroom of the tiny house she shared with her mum, Amelia pulled a dusty box out from under her bed. Inside were pieces of a life she had tried to forget. A photograph of Sophia, smiling and holding a bright red balloon. A newspaper clipping that read, "Teenager Sofia Alvarez leaps to her death after bullying incident." A flash drive with saved files, text threads, videos, evidence, all the proof that bullying kills. Amelia pressed the flash drive to her chest. This was the reason she came to Jefferson High. This was the reason she refused to run anymore. Victoria, Kane and her friends weren't just bullies. They weren't just tormentors. They were a reminder of every person who had ever tried to kill the light in someone like Sophia, someone like Amelia. But this time, she would make sure the world watched as the guilty were held to account. The allies emerged the next morning. Amelia walked into school expecting glares. Instead, she found herself surrounded by a handful of students she didn't know. A boy named Michael spoke first. "I'm sorry about what happened to you," he said quietly. "My sister, she went through the same thing last year. They said it was just a joke, but she dropped out." A girl named Priya offered a shy smile. "If you want help, if you want to make sure this doesn't happen again, we're with you." Amelia felt a lump rise in her throat. It was the first sign of belonging she had felt in years. Belonging built not on cruelty, but on understanding. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had an army. The new game by the end of the week. Victoria and her friends weren't laughing anymore. The whispers weren't about Amelia anymore. They weren't about the new girl anymore. They were about Victoria Kane, about the texts she had sent, the threats she had made, the quiet terror she had unleashed. With every shift in the wind, every glance in the hallway, every glance down at a phone screen, Victoria felt her world unravel. Then came the second video. Amelia didn't post it herself. Someone else did. Someone with access to Victoria's phone. Someone who captured Victoria, Hannah, and Kyle plotting the night in the locker room. Someone who added a caption. "The new girl had a voice. Will you listen?" By Friday afternoon, Victoria Kane, the girl who had lorded over Jefferson High for 3 years, was called to the principal's office. Hannah didn't come to school that day. Kyle, the quarterback, was suspended from the team. But for Amelia, this wasn't enough. Not yet. The text that changes everything that evening. Amelia received a text. Not from Victoria. Not from Kyle. Not from Hannah. But from an unknown number. "I know what happened to Sophia. We need to talk." Amelia sank down onto her bed, hands shaking as she read the words again. Sophia, her sister, the sister she had lost, the sister she came here to honor. How could someone at Jefferson High possibly know about Sophia? What else had this school buried? What other secrets were hidden within its walls? Amelia clenched the phone tight. Whatever this was, it was bigger than Victoria Kane, bigger than herself. The final revelation the next morning. A single envelope was left on Amelia's locker. No name, no return address, just a single piece of paper inside. "The one you seek is closer than you think. Be careful, new girl. The walls have ears." Amelia pressed the paper to her chest, swallowing hard as her heart pounded. Whatever this was, it was no longer just about revenge. This was about truth, justice, the sister she lost, and the sister she refused to become. As the first bell rang, Amelia tightened her grip on the paper. Whatever came next, she was ready, and as she walked down the crowded hallway, a voice deep within promised, "This ends when the truth comes out, no matter the cost." The letter from the shadows. Amelia stood in the hallway, pressed tight against the locker that held both her books and her secrets. The crumpled piece of paper she'd found this morning felt like a burning coal in her palm. "The one you seek is closer than you think. Be careful, new girl. The walls have ears." Her sister Sophia had been gone for 2 years, and still, the echoes of that tragedy refused to fade. What had happened to Sophia was supposed to be a closed chapter, an accident. At least that's what the official statement said. But this note said otherwise. Amelia sank to the floor, resting her head against the locker. The sting of betrayal bubbled like acid in her chest. Someone at Jefferson High knew. Someone had kept a secret about Sophia. Someone had watched her sister walk the same hallways, bear the same cruelty, and no one had stopped it. Closer than you think. Those words wrapped themselves around her thoughts like a thorn. What could that mean? A teacher? A student? Someone she passed every morning? She tightened her grip on the paper until it shook. Whatever the answer, she was going to find it, even if it meant tearing down the walls of this school, piece by piece. The new allies at lunch. Amelia found herself surrounded by Michael Priya and a handful of others who had rallied to her side after the video went viral. They weren't friends, not yet, not in the traditional sense, but the way they glanced at each other, wary, hopeful, felt like belonging for the first time. Michael spoke first. "Have you found out who M is?" Amelia shook her head. Slowly, "Not yet, but I have a feeling they're trying to help, or warn me." Priya pulled out her phone. "If this person has information about Sophia, that means someone is covering for Victoria and her friends. Someone doesn't want the truth out." Amelia felt her voice shaking as she spoke. "Then we have to find out who Victoria Kane doesn't operate alone. Not if she can bury evidence like this." The group exchanged wary glances, and then Michael spoke. "What if the person you're looking for is one of the teachers? Someone with access? Someone who watched this happen and did nothing?" The thought felt like ice in her spine. Suddenly, every teacher she'd smiled at, every adult she passed felt like a suspect. The break-in thought night. Long after the halls of Jefferson High had gone quiet, Amelia came back, with a borrowed keycard and Michael by her side. She snuck into the office area. The hum of the vending machine felt too loud. The sound of their breathing felt like a drumbeat. They knew this was dangerous. Getting caught could mean suspension, expulsion, or worse. But if the secret about Sophia was buried in those files, Amelia refused to walk away. "Here," Michael whispered, stopping in front of a door marked Administration. Amelia pressed the card to the reader. A faint beep, and the door clicked open. Rows upon rows of files lined the walls. They weren't digital. They weren't online. They were old-fashioned manila folders, stacked like tombstones. "Where do we even start?" Michael asked. Amelia pulled out a flashlight and started scanning names. The sting in her palm felt like a reminder of why she was here. Then she found it. Sophia Alvarez, Disciplinary Action Incident Report. She pulled the file out slowly, brushing dust from its surface. Michael stepped closer, flashlight in hand. Pages upon pages of reports. Bullying complaints, notes from teachers, a handwritten statement from Sophia herself. Amelia felt the room spin as she read aloud. Sophia Alvarez, aged 16, accused of aggression towards fellow student Victoria Kane. Incident escalated due to ongoing bullying. Multiple complaints filed by Sophia. Disciplinary action taken. Final note: student withdrew from Jefferson High due to family circumstances. Her knees shook. This was a lie. Sophia hadn't been the aggressor. She had been the target. Then came the final page. A handwritten memo from the principal at the time. Request from Kane family to protect the reputation of Victoria Kane and ensure no further investigation. Will review options. Will bury the complaint. Amelia sank to the floor, shaking. The sting of betrayal bubbled like lava in her chest. It wasn't just Victoria. It was the school itself. The text from HS phone buzzed. Another text, another piece of the puzzle. Check the basement archives. What you seek has been hidden too long. Amelia felt a chill race down her spine. Someone was watching. Someone wanted her to find the truth. Someone was guiding her towards a door no one wanted to open. Basement archives, she breathed. "Are you sure about this?" Michael asked, voice shaking. Amelia pulled herself to her feet and tightened the strap of her backpack. "If this is where the truth is buried, that's where we're going." The basement was dark, damp, and smelled like mildew. A lone bulb cast a sickly light across the long rows of boxes, marked with years and initials. Amelia felt her breath quicken as she pulled a box down from the top shelf, brushing away a decade of dust. Inside, she found photographs, not just of Sophia, but of 3 other students, all bullied, all silenced, all erased from the official records. Each photo came with a statement. Each statement came with the same final line: settled privately. No further investigation required. Amelia sank to the floor, shaking, surrounded by evidence that Sophia's death had been part of a pattern, a cover-up, a legacy of silence. Then she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway above. She pressed herself into the shadows. Flashlight shaking. The sound of a door opening. A voice deep, commanding. Is someone down here? Amelia held her breath, heart beating like a drum. Suddenly, this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. The final text, the sound of the door slamming shut, echoed in the basement, and Amelia felt herself slide deeper into the shadows. The sound of the steps stopped. Then, silenced at her phone, buzzed one final time. Trust no one, not even those closest to you. The truth will set you free if it doesn't kill you first. Amelia sank down, shaking, surrounded by files that spoke of lies and silence, betrayal and death. Whatever came next, one thing was certain. The walls of Jefferson High held more secrets than she had ever imagined, and someone didn't want those secrets to surface. The secret, beneath the school. Amelia sank down among the old, dusty files, breathing hard. The sound of that deep voice in the hallway still echoed in her ears. Someone was down here. Someone knew she was looking. Someone would kill to keep these secrets buried. She pressed herself tighter into the corner, holding the flashlight low, making herself as small as possible. The sound of the steps stopped. Then came a voice, one she didn't recognize. Someone down here. It was deep, authoritative, not a student. Amelia felt a bead of sweat run down her spine. The sound of a door shutting, a long silence, then a click, a lock. Her heart pounded wildly. They had locked the basement. The files that should never be found. Amelia pulled herself closer to the shelf, brushing away dust until she spotted it, a stack of files labeled Kane Family Confidential. She pulled one down and opened it. What she found made her gasp. There weren't just complaints about Victoria Kane. There were letters from staff, from teachers, from parents, sealed and buried. Every letter said the same thing. The Kane family has requested a quiet settlement. The Kane family has offered significant financial contribution for silence. The Kane family has warned of consequences if evidence emerges. Then came the piece of paper that made her blood run cold. A signed statement from Sofia Alvarez herself. I am being bullied, not by one person, but by many. The school knows. The Kane family knows. They have promised to protect their daughter and destroy mine. If you are reading this, I am no longer here to tell the truth. Amelia felt her knees give way. Her sister hadn't just been bullied. She had been hunted, silenced. And every page in that room felt like a witness to the betrayal. The sound of a lock, turning. Amelia snapped herself out of the trance as she heard the sound of a key sliding into the basement door. Suddenly, the air felt too thin. She pulled herself deeper into the corner, holding the flashlight low as a sliver of light cut across the room. A figure stepped down the stairs. The sound of shoes scraping concrete felt like a countdown. Is someone down here? Came the voice, deep, calm. To calm, Amelia felt herself shaking, every instinct telling her to run. But the room was a dead end. No windows, no other door, just shelves and files. The figure stepped closer. A beam of light swept across the room, brushing her leg. Amelia drew herself tighter, biting down hard to keep from making a sound. Then came a voice she recognized. Not Victoria, not Kyle, not Hannah. It was Principal Reynolds, the man behind the secrets. Come out. Amelia, Reynolds said, voice dripping with ice. I know you're down here. Amelia felt herself stiffen. Somehow, he knew. He pulled out a phone and waved it like evidence. We've noticed a lot of activity tonight. The cameras didn't miss you. Whatever you came down here to find, you're too late. Amelia pressed herself into the corner as she felt the sting of betrayal twist deep within. It hadn't just been Victoria and her friends. The rot went higher, deeper. Then came the sound of Reynolds' voice again. Your sister tried the same thing. You know, tried to tell the truth, tried to expose the Kane family, tried to expose me. And you know what happened? He stepped closer, brushing a hand across the old files. It didn't end well for her, did it? Amelia felt the sting of grief twist like a knife. The sting bubbled into anger, a slow flame rising within her chest. Not just for Sophia, not just for herself, but for every person buried in these files. She tightened her grip on the flashlight. The narrowest Prentice pulled a key from his jacket and waved it like a warning. I can walk out of here and make sure no one finds you, new girl. Just like I made sure no one found Sophia's voice. Do you understand? Amelia rose slowly from the corner, brushing dust from her jeans, and met his gaze. Her voice came out low, shaking, sharp as a blade. "Try." Reynolds took a step forward. In a flash, Amelia whipped the flashlight toward a metal shelf, toppling a stack of files with a deafening crash. The sound distracted him just long enough for her to slide past, darting between the shelves like a shadow. "Stop her," he roared, slamming a hand down on the table. Amelia felt adrenaline surge through her body. The sting of betrayal became fuel. The sting of grief became strength. She slammed herself into the door, twisted the latch, and felt it give. The sound of Reynolds shouting for help chased her down the hallway as she tore through the dark corridors of Jefferson High. The text that changes everything. Amelia slammed herself into the girls' bathroom, locking the door, and sank down, shaking. Phone buzzed. Another text from the mysterious M. "Trust no one, not even those closest. The Kane family has the principal, the staff, the files, but they don't have the internet. Get ready. The world needs to know." Amelia pulled herself to her knees and opened the files she had snapped with her phone. Hundreds of pages, dozens of victims. The Kane family had buried complaint after complaint. They had silenced students, bribed staff, destroyed families. Amelia clenched her phone tight. This wasn't just about Sophia anymore. This was about every child silenced, every voice ignored. The new game the next morning, Jefferson High felt like a powder keg. Amelia walked the hallways knowing every glance could be a betrayal, every teacher a threat. Victoria had returned, surrounded by a dwindling circle of friends. Kyle hadn't come back at all. Then came the moment that changed everything. Amelia pressed send, a single link, shared across every social media feed connected to the school. The files, the photos, the witness statements, the evidence buried for too long. The truth about Jefferson High and the Kane family. No more secrets, no more silence. The screen erupted with notifications. The sound of gasps and whispers bubbled down every hallway. The sound of phones lighting up felt like a storm crashing over the school. Then came the sound of Reynolds' voice over the intercom. "Amelia Alvarez, report to the principal's office immediately." The final confrontation. Amelia didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, didn't run. She stood in the hallway, brushing a hand across the scar still healing in her palm. The sting felt like a reminder of Sophia, of herself, of every broken moment that had brought her here. With every step, she felt stronger. With every step, she felt the sting of grief evolve into strength. With every step, she felt herself becoming the person her sister needed her to be. And when she pushed open the door to the principal's office, she found herself surrounded by Reynolds, Victoria, and Mr. Kane. 3 people, 3 secrets, 3 guilty faces. Amelia tightened her grip on the phone. "It's over," she said quietly. "The whole world knows. You can't bury this anymore." Reynolds stepped closer, voice shaking with desperation. "You have no idea what you've started." Amelia smiled faintly. "No, Mr. Reynolds, you have no idea what you've started." Then came the sound of sirens. The price of truth. The sound of the sirens felt like a warning and a promise. Amelia stood in the office surrounded by Reynolds, Victoria, and Mr. Kane. 3 faces twisted, with anger, guilt, and desperation. The air felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Reynolds slammed a hand down on the desk. "You have no idea what you've started, Amelia. This school, this family, we have connections. We have ways of making things disappear." Amelia refused to flinch. "Not anymore. Not this time," she said, voice shaking but strong. "I've seen the files. The world has seen the files. You can't bury this anymore." Victoria Kane, the once untouchable queen of Jefferson High, sank down into a chair, shaking. The sting of betrayal bubbled across her pale, frightened face. "Amelia, wait. This doesn't have to ruin us. We can fix this. Just delete the post." Amelia felt herself shaking, but not from fear, from anger, from heartbreak, from grief. These people had buried Sophia like she was a secret. They had taken from Amelia the only person she had left. "Fix it," she repeated. "You can't fix death, Victoria. You can't fix bullying that kills. You can't fix silence that lets cruelty win." Then came the sound of doors crashing open. The arrival of just as 2 police officers stepped into the room. The tension felt like a live wire. Reynolds tried to wave it off. "This is a misunderstanding. A student breaking into files, spreading lies." The taller officer stepped closer, brushing a hand across the files laid out like evidence across the desk. We have a copy of these files. An anonymous tip came through this morning. They match a pattern, a long list of complaints buried for years, including one about Sofia Alvarez. Amelia felt herself sink down in relief, in heartbreak. The sting bubbled in her chest, sting of the years she had suffered, sting of knowing the sister she lost was no accident. Reynolds shook his head wildly. This is a setup, a fabrication. But the second officer pulled out a document, a signed statement. The words rang like a death knell. Sofia Alvarez. Complaint buried at request of Kane family. Final review signed by Principal Reynolds. Amelia felt herself shaking, burning, breaking open. Not for herself anymore. Not just for Sofia anymore, but for every person buried by silence. Tell them, Victoria, she said quietly. Tell them what you and your friends did to Sofia, what you tried to do to me. Victoria sank down, shaking. I didn't want any of this, she whimpered. My father, he said, if I didn't protect the family, we'd lose everything. They gave money, Amelia, to Reynolds, to the school, to bury Sofia's story, to make sure no one talked about it. Each word felt like a hammer. Mr. Kane surged forward, grabbing Victoria by the arm. Shut up, he yelled, but the sound of handcuffs silenced him. The final betrayal. Amelia felt herself sink down in the office chair, numb. The sting of victory felt like salt pressed into an open wound. This was bigger than she ever imagined, bigger than herself. As the police led Mr. Kane and Principal Reynolds out of the room, Victoria sank down to the floor, shaking. I'm sorry, Amelia, she said quietly. I didn't want any of this to happen. I didn't want Sofia to. Amelia shook her head sharply. You didn't want it, or you didn't want to lose. The sting bubbled in her chest, rising into a whisper. My sister lost her life. You lost your reputation. Do you really think those are the same thing? Victoria sank down deeper, broken. Whatever came next for her was no longer in Amelia's hands. The ripple effect. By morning, Jefferson High was swarming with reporters. The sting of silence that had buried Sofia Alvarez was now a sound the world refused to ignore. Students spoke out. Survivors came forward. Social media exploded with stories of cruelty and betrayal. Of the countless moments when Jefferson High chose money and reputation over its students, Amelia felt herself standing in the middle of it all. Not as a hero, not as a savior, but as a witness, as a sister, as a voice that refused to stay quiet. Through it all, one message bubbled across every screen: the truth will set you free. Amelia stood in the quiet courtyard of Jefferson High, brushing her hand across the plaque that hadn't been there a week ago. Its fresh bronze shimmered in the morning sun. In memory of Sofia Alvarez, may her voice echo forever. May no one walk these halls in silence again. Amelia sank down beside the plaque, brushing the sting of tears from the corner of her eyes. The sting felt different now. Not the sting of betrayal, not the sting of terror, not the sting of loss. It was the sting of release, a sting that promised the pain she had buried for so long would finally rest. The aftermath, the arrests of Mr. Kane and Principal Reynolds had shaken Jefferson High to its core. Victoria Kane had been taken into custody as a witness and would be tried as a juvenile for her role in the bullying campaign. The Kane family's legacy of silence was finished. Hannah and Kyle, expelled, humiliated, and abandoned by friends and families desperate to save their own reputations. The videos circulated online like wildfire. The whispers of the new girl became a rallying cry for accountability. For the first time in its long, proud history, Jefferson High was forced to confront its dark underbelly. An independent review began. New policies were announced. Bullying was treated as a crisis, not a phase. Students spoke openly about their struggles. Survivors came forward. The sting of silence became a symphony of voices. Amelia watched, from the edges, grateful and exhausted. This was bigger than herself, bigger than Sofia, bigger than any one person. This was a shift, a moment when silence gave way to a long-awaited sound, a sound that refused to be ignored. The letter from days later, an envelope appeared in Amelia's locker. No name, no address, just the faint smell of old paper and a stamp that had long since faded. She sank down and unfolded the crisp page. The sting bubbled in her chest as she read. Amelia, you don't know me, but I knew Sofia. I was with her the night she tried to tell the world what happened. I was too scared to stand with her then, too broken to speak, too afraid. But seeing you rise, seeing the world shift because of you, it gave me strength. You gave me strength. Whatever comes next for you, whatever path you walk, know this: you have changed more than one life. You have changed mine. You have made the world a little safer, a little brighter, for those still finding their voice. Amelia sank down as tears streamed down her cheeks. The sting bubbled deep, rising like a wave until it crashed, leaving only quiet, hopeful calm. The new day, a week later, Amelia stood in front of the courtyard where Sophia's plaque shimmered in the sun. The sting bubbled one final time, a sting that felt like goodbye and a new beginning all at once. Students stopped as she passed, not with whispers, not with sneers, not with judgment. They smiled, nodded, some waved, others offered quiet words. Thank you, Amelia, we stand with you, we remember Sophia. Each word felt like a seed planted in a long frozen earth. Priya came to stand beside her, brushing a hand across the plaque. We can make this better, she said softly. For all the Sophias still out there, we can make sure no one else has to walk the path you walked. Amelia nodded, brushing the sting from the corner of her eyes. That's why she came here. That's why she spoke. Not for revenge, not for anger, but for change, to make sure no one has to stand alone. Then came Michael and a handful of others, students, friends, survivors. Together, in that quiet space, they promised the same thing: never again. The final lesson. Amelia sank down on the edge of the courtyard, brushing the sting of emotion from her cheeks. All the moments that had shaped this journey surged through her heart. The sting of betrayal when Victoria and her friends humiliated her. The sting of guilt and heartbreak when she uncovered Sophia's files. The sting of terror when Reynolds came down those basement stairs. The sting of victory when the files went viral and silence became sound. Each sting felt like a chapter, a scar, not a sign of brokenness, but a symbol of survival. A reminder that strength doesn't come from silence. It comes from the moments when silence is broken. As the morning sun shimmered across the courtyard, Amelia pressed a hand to the plaque. Thank you, Sophia, she whispered, for showing me the way, for reminding me that sometimes to lose everything is the only way to find out who you really are. Then she stood, brushing herself off, and walked down the path lined with students who refused to forget. The end.